The Titanic is disintegrating, but its lost twin, the Britannic, has just defied all the laws of time. A state-of-the-art submersible descended into the waters of Greece, and what its cameras captured is an impossible anomaly. A ship that seems to be waiting for its crew to return, intact and defiant. How has it survived the corrosion that devours its brother? Before we dive into this mystery, smash the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell. Let's go to the bottom. In the modern mythology of disasters, the RMS Titanic occupies the undisputed throne. It is the alpha and the omega of our obsession with shipwreck. A story of arrogance and ice that has been told 1,000 times. However, history, in its infinite capacity for irony, created a sequel that surpasses the original in almost every technical and visual aspect, although it remains hidden in the shadows of popular memory. There is a premise that has begun to circulate strongly after the latest high-tech expeditions. A new submersible entered the wreck of the Britannic, and what it saw should not exist. This phrase does not allude to sea monsters or ectoplasm ghosts, but to a physical reality that defies the logic of decay. While the Titanic is disintegrating, consumed by metal-eating bacteria in the abyssal darkness of the North Atlantic, its twin sister, the HMHS Britannic, rests in the Aegean Sea in a state of preservation so unsettling that it seems like a temporal anomaly. Recently, new expeditions have achieved what seemed impossible, penetrating the bowels of this medical leviathan with cutting-edge imaging technology. What the submersible lights revealed is a time capsule that should not exist because the entropy of the ocean usually claims everything. But the Britannic has resisted. This essay explores the journey inside the largest and safest ship ever built by the White Star Line, a vessel that learned from the mistakes of its older brother only to meet an equally fatal but much more violent fate. Through the lens of modern explorers, we will descend into the blue waters of Greece to confront a vision that leaves experts breathless. A ship that seems to be waiting, intact and defiant, for its crew to return. To understand why what the submersible saw is so shocking, we must first understand what we are looking at. The Britannic was not born with that name. Originally, it was rumored it would be called Gigantic, completing the Olympic trilogy of Greek greatness: Olympic, Titanic, Gigantic. But after the 1912 tragedy, arrogance transformed into patriotic prudence, and the Britannic was born. This ship was the response of British engineering to the trauma of the Titanic. As the submersible descends to the wreck today, what it illuminates is not simply a ship, but a floating erratum. The engineers at Harland and Wolff in Belfast took the Titanic's blueprints and filled them with corrections in red ink. The Britannic was wider to compensate for stability. It had a double hull that rose higher, protecting the boiler rooms and the engine room like armor, and the most visible, the lifeboat davits. They were enormous cranes capable of launching boats even if the ship was listing violently. The Britannic was designed to be, truly, unsinkable. However, it never carried a paying passenger. World War I broke out before it could be finished, and Edwardian luxury was replaced by military austerity. It was painted bright white, with 3 large red crosses and a horizontal green stripe. It became His Majesty's hospital ship, HMHS Britannic. This transformation is crucial to understanding the images that divers and robots see today. There are no grand oak staircases for the aristocracy, but medical wards designed for efficiency. Unlike the Titanic's tomb, which lies almost 4,000 meters deep in crushing darkness, the Britannic rests at about 120 meters in the Key Channel. This creates a unique visual paradox. Sunlight, on clear days, can faintly penetrate down to the wreck. bathing it in an ethereal blue glow. When the new submersible begins its descent, the experience is radically different from that of the Atlantic. It is not a journey into black void, but a flight through a column of crystal-clear water. As the vehicle approaches the bottom, the shape of the ship emerges not as a rust stain, but as a massive and coherent structure. The Britannic lies on its starboard side. It is an steel whale 269 meters long sleeping on its side. What should not exist begins to manifest here in the first panoramic view. In any other shipwreck over a century old, we would expect to see a collapsed mass, an unrecognizable structure devoured by corrosion and fishing nets. But the Britannic maintains its lines. Its bow, sharp as a knife, points toward a destination it never reached. The structural integrity is such that, visually, one feels the irrational urge to believe that if air were injected into it and it were set upright, it could float again. This preservation defies the visual narrative that the Titanic has accustomed us to, that of total ruin. The true astonishment, and the core of our premise, occurs when the submersible and the ROV, remotely operated vehicles, approach the details. The recent expedition, equipped with ultra-high-definition cameras, has captured textures that seem impossible after 100 years under the sea. One of the most chilling findings is the state of the wood. On the Titanic, the wood has been almost completely devoured by marine organisms. On the Britannic, due to the specific conditions of the Aegean water and the depth, teak decks still exist. As the lights pass over them, the grain of the wood can be seen, an organic material that should have dissolved decades ago. It is a sight that generates cognitive dissonance, seeing intact Edwardian carpentry surrounded by fish. The submersible moves toward the bridge. This is where the ghost of Captain Charles Bartlett seems to reside. The telemotor, the mechanism that controlled the rudder, stands solitary. It is the same piece of machinery that on the Titanic has become an icon of desolation. But on the Britannic, the bridge retains an astonishing structural dignity. The bronze instruments gleam under the artificial light, polished not by human hands, but by the gentle currents. Delving deeper, the submersible illuminates the rows of portholes. And here resides one of the mysteries that the images confirm with brutal clarity. Many are open. This should not be on a ship in a war zone. History tells us that the Britannic sank in only 55 minutes, 3 times faster than the Titanic, despite its safety improvements. Why? The submersible cameras give us the visual answer. Nurses, in an attempt to ventilate the wards full of the smell of ether and disinfectant, had opened the portholes that November morning in 1916. When the ship struck the mine and began to list, those portholes became fatal water inlets, nullifying the raised watertight bulkheads. Seeing those open windows today, frozen in the exact position a human hand left them a century ago, is seeing the cause of the ship's death. It is forensic evidence preserved in blue amber. But there is something even more surreal. In certain protected sections of the interior, explorers have reported seeing intact glass, light bulbs that are still in their sockets, window panes that did not burst from pressure or impact. In the world of violent underwater archaeology, glass is the first thing to disappear. That the Britannic guards its fragile glass while its steel resists time is a macabre poetry that experts struggle to process. Let's take a short break in this blue depth. It is unsettling to see a shipwreck so alive compared to the Titanic, right? While the other crumbles, this one seems to resist dying. I have a difficult question for you. If you could choose one submersible trip, would you go to see the ghostly remains of the Titanic or this perfect time capsule of the Britannic? Write your choice in the comments. I want to know which side wins. And if you are enjoying this historical mystery, don't forget to give a powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Your support is what allows us to keep descending into the unknown. Let's keep exploring. There is another aspect of what should not exist that is purely biological. The Britannic is not just a shipwreck. It has been transformed into an artificial reef of explosive biodiversity. The expedition images show the hull encrusted with corals of vibrant colors, reds, oranges, and purples, that contrast violently with the deep blue of the water and the gray of the metal. This exuberant life creates a natural theme park atmosphere that clashes with the reality of being a war grave. 30 people died in the sinking, most of them shredded by the ship's own propellers, which, as the stern rose, sucked in 2 lifeboats. The submersible passes near those same gigantic propellers today. They are bronze monuments the size of a house. Seeing them still, covered in sponges and surrounded by schools of tiny fish, is seeing the machinery of death converted into a cradle of life. It is a juxtaposition that should not exist: extreme beauty over mechanical tragedy. Modern expeditions have managed to penetrate towards the machinery zones. Here, the size of the Britannic becomes oppressive. The massive boilers, the connecting rods of the triple expansion engines, everything is there. On the Titanic, this area is a collapsed labyrinth of twisted metal difficult to interpret. On the Britannic, it looks like the engineers simply went out for lunch. The preservation of the engine room allows naval historians to see the 1916 engineering as it was. Valves, pipes, and pressure gauges can be identified. It is a submerged industrial museum. What is unsettling is the feeling of pause. There is no chaos of massive destruction in these deep areas. There is an orderly silence. The submersible illuminates walkways that the stokers walked on, and the structure is so intact that one could imagine walking on them today, if they weren't vertical due to the ship's position. One of the most debated points that the new images have helped to clarify is the damage to the bow. For years, it was debated whether it was a torpedo or a mine. The submersible, upon inspecting the impact zone, shows the brutality of the explosion. The metal is bent inward and outward in a chaotic pattern. But what the high-resolution images reveal, and what should not be there according to the original plans, is the magnitude of the structural deformation that caused the sinking so quickly. A massive crack has been observed, suggesting that the ship twisted upon itself as it sank. But, miraculously, it did not break in two like the Titanic. The Britannic held together until the end, and it remains held together now. This resistance of the steel, this refusal to break despite the unimaginable forces of physics, is a testament to the over-engineering applied after the 1912 disaster. We are seeing the Titanic's correction taking the hit, although failing to save itself. It is impossible not to return to the comparison with the Titanic. When we see images of the Titanic, we see a body in advanced decomposition. We see rusticles hanging like melted flesh. The Britannic has very few of these formations. Why? Science tells us it is a combination of the depth, temperature, salinity, and specific bacteria of the Mediterranean. But for the human observer, for the eye behind the submersible's camera, it looks like magic. It seems that time passes slower in the key channel. This supernatural preservation allows us to see details of daily life. Remains of hospital beds, metal frames, bathroom tiles. In one expedition, the remains of the smokestack that fell and separated from the ship could be clearly seen. The smokestack is crushed, but the mouth of the ship where it was connected reveals the internal anatomy of the ventilation systems with textbook clarity. What the submersible saw has profound implications. It teaches us that shipwrecks are not all the same. The Britannic is a perfect laboratory. By not existing accelerated degradation, scientists can study how modern materials age on geological time scales. Furthermore, the images obtained serve to debunk conspiracy theories. For years, it was said that the Britannic was illegally carrying weapons, which justified the German attack. Exhaustive explorations of the holds, now visible thanks to the penetration technology of the ROV, have not shown mountains of ammunition, but coal and medical supplies. The truth, preserved by the cold water, has come to light. It was, effectively, a mercy ship. There is an emotional element in the reports of those who have seen these images or have descended to the wreck. A feeling of voyeuristic intrusion that is sharper than in other shipwrecks. Because the ship is so whole, it feels more inhabited. When the submersible illuminates a long corridor that is lost in the darkness, the human mind fills in the gaps. It is not an abstract ruin. It is a corridor. One expects to see a nurse turning the corner. This atmospheric quality is what makes the images so powerful and, at the same time, so uncomfortable. We are seeing a domestic end workspace that was violently interrupted, but has not been erased. The premise of our essay culminates in an aesthetic reflection. A shipwreck is a horrible event. It is twisted metal, panic, drowning, and loss. It should not be beautiful. And yet, the images brought back by the new submersible are of a hypnotic beauty. The contrast between the white, now bluish-gray, of the hull and the deep blue of the Aegean, the elegant shape of the curved stern, the way the light plays with the intact railings, everything conspires to create an accidental work of art. It is an involuntary monument. The fact that something built for war and destroyed by war has found a second life as a cathedral of silence and marine life is the final paradox. Unlike the Titanic, which will disappear in a few decades, the Britannic has a long future. Its state of preservation suggests that it will remain there, almost the same, for centuries. It will become the reference wreck for future generations who want to understand what the ocean liners of the Golden Age were like. However, the danger now is us. Submersibles, technical divers, and illegal fishing are the new threats. The visibility and accessibility that make the Britannic so fascinating also make it vulnerable. What should not exist could cease to exist if it is not protected. The images reveal fishing nets snagged on the superstructures, modern scars on an ancient body. In the end, when the submersible turns off its lights and begins the ascent to the surface, leaving the sleeping giant behind, we are left with a feeling of wonder and melancholy. The Britannic is the brother that survived time, but not war. It is the perfect twin that never had its debut ball. What the submersible saw, the intact wood, the closed and open glass, the machines stopped dead, the paint that is still guessed beneath the coral, defies our understanding of decay. We say that it should not exist because it reminds us of our own fragility. If the world's strongest and safest ship can end up on its side at the bottom of the sea due to a cheap metal mine, what security do we have? But it also tells us that memory is resilient. The ocean has decided, against all chemical and biological odds, to save the Britannic from oblivion, keeping it in a state of suspended animation. The new images are not just data, they are a mirror. A mirror at the bottom of the Aegean that reflects human ambition, the tragedy of war, and the stubborn persistence of matter against nothingness. And that, without a doubt, is something worth seeing, even if it leaves us speechless and with a heavy heart at the magnitude of what lies beneath the waves. It is chilling to think that, while the Titanic disappears, the Britannic is still down there, almost perfect, as if it had sunk yesterday. We have seen intact glass and wood that refuses to rot. A true time capsule from World War I. Now I ask you, would you dare to explore its corridors, or do you prefer to see it from the screen? Leave me your opinion in the comments. If this expedition fascinated you, share the video and be sure to subscribe for the next finding. Until next time.